Welcome to Salute Your Sports, Common Enchev, Tom Castleman, Drew Brackett. It's NBA play-in week. Some of my favorite teams and one of Drew's will be looking to pick up big wins and make the playoffs.
Yeah, we're going heavy on the hard court today, but we're not going to neglect the ice as well. Talk a little bit of hockey, and also the NFL schedule is released. We'll talk briefly on that as well, and of course, talk about Common's favorite segments. It's going to be a great show all around.
Absolutely. We'll start with the NBA play-in tournament. We'll talk about the West first. It's the Lakers and the Warriors. That's Wednesday night. Time is at 10 o'clock Eastern time. Ooh, that's a late game. It's at Staples Center in LA. Common, who do you think wins that game?
Yeah, first off, I'm hoping that you're gonna stay up for that game because that's kind of past your bedtime there.
That's questionable.
Questionable.
Well, this questionable for the game.
Yes, I'm questionable for the game.
LeBron James and Anthony Davis set to go for that game, though. They both featured in LA's last two wins before the season started. This game features two of my favorite players in the NBA, LeBron James and Stephen Curry, two hot teams. The Lakers have won 5 straight. The Warriors, by the way, have won 6 straight and have the best net rating in the NBA over the last 20 games. Guys, I think this is going to be a close game. It could really go either way. We know that Stephen Curry is capable of scoring 50 points anytime out in a one-game scenario. Not a guy I want to play if I'm the Lakers. Not to mention that nothing has really come easy for the Lakers this season. Certainly injuries to LeBron and Davis have been a big part of that, but I think this is going to be a really, really good game. I'll let your first impressions on it before I make my prediction in this game with my two favorite NBA players, Curry and LeBron.
Yeah, it's definitely the most compelling game that I think we're going to have maybe, throughout the entire regular season. We talked about some pretty big matchups, but it really all comes down to this. And the stakes are really high. It's you win this game, you're definitely in the playoffs. If you lose, you still have a chance to get in. That's the godsend for either of these two teams in a really, really tough matchup. I think it's going to be there's a lot of different things. Steph Curry, I think, is capable of going off just about any night that he wants to. It's kind of who else is going to show up. Kelly Oubre's had been hot and cold all season. Jordan Poole, the same. Andrew Wiggins scores points, but isn't the most efficient scorer. So it's going to be, which one of those guys kind of steps up as the second fiddle to Steph Curry and really carries them over the finish line. And then for the Lakers, I mean, it's a little bit narrative driven too now, isn't it? Because we kind of know, like, LeBron James has been talking about his injury a little bit, but we also know how optically driven he is. So what's a better story in terms of, if they lose, they're the 8th seed, and then it'd be no team has ever gone from being, the last seed in to winning the NBA Finals type of thing. And the Lakers are a team to do it because they really shouldn't be an 8th seed. They've been facing a lot of injuries. The last kind of topic to touch on for this game is that we know teams do tanking. We know teams, kind of play around with the schedule towards the end to get a favorable matchup. If you're the LA Lakers, who would you rather face? The Phoenix Suns in that 2-7 game or a banged up Utah Jazz team in the 1-8 game? That's a little bit of an interesting thing to factor on as well if the Lakers are, I guess, overconfident enough to feel they can beat the winner of San Antonio Memphis, which we'll be talking about a little bit later on.
Absolutely. And before Drew goes, and speaking of that tanking, one could argue that the Nuggets tanked so they don't have to face the Lakers. Last game of the season, the Nuggets and Trailblazers playing each other. Jokic played less minutes. Had the Nuggets beaten the Trailblazers, the Lakers would have had the 6th seed. Nuggets would have had to play the Lakers in the first round. I certainly think Denver definitely tanked its way out of playing the Lakers. But Drew, what do you see in this Warriors-Lakers game?
I mean, yeah, Denver didn't, play as hard. Well, they didn't have their guys in as they should have, and Jokic played less minutes, and they had a couple of bench players starting at one point. So absolutely, they didn't feel the need to win that game. But as far as the Warriors-Lakers matchup, should be a great one. My head says to, look at the Lakers winning the game. I mean, both teams are hot. Warriors have won 6 in a row. Lakers have won 5 in a row. So I think it's going to be fairly close. But in the end, I'm not sure Steph Curry has that much help. And if you put LeBron on Curry, I mean, watch out. I don't know if they'll do that because you don't want LeBron running that much. So he'll have to put somebody else on him. But they're going to zero in on Curry. And I could see the Lakers winning by 7 or 8.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. The Lakers are going to somewhat contain Curry. I don't know if they're going to put LeBron James in. I think certainly a healthy LeBron James, Anthony Davis, fully healthy, fully fit, because that's the other thing. Even if their injuries are fine, it takes a little bit of time to get that game fitness, especially that playoff fitness. But I am going to take the Lakers just because I like what LeBron has around them much more than what Curry has around them. I mean, even looking at a guy like Montrezl Harrell, you can make a case that, he's the third, fourth option on the Lakers. He might be the second option on Golden State. And I don't know that they're going to keep him down as much as they did earlier this season. But you look at Curry's 2 games against the Lakers. He had 16 points and 26 points in the 2 games earlier this season. That 16-point game was one of Curry's worst shooting games of the year. So the Lakers have a phenomenal defense. That's what people kind of don't realize, that they're a top 5 defense in the NBA this season. And actually, their defense is what's got them to this point to get a playoff spot. If it weren't for their defense, we might be talking about them not even making the playoffs. So I think the Lakers have a very good defense where they can kind of focus in on Curry. They can go either one of 2 ways. They can really try and stop Curry and really let the other guys beat him, or they can say, Curry, get yours. Everyone else is going to get nothing. But the Lakers will find a way to win that game. I do think it's going to be close. I think, Drew, you said that Lakers might win by 7 or 8. I think that the Warriors are probably going to keep it within 5 points, which is the betting line, which is right on the edge of the betting line. I was looking at this game for locks of the week, and the line kept going down. It opened at 7 points. Now it's down to 4.5, 5. So that'll be really close. But I think we're looking at right at about a 5-point game. I do like the Lakers winning. As to Tom's point, though, certainly, yeah, I think the Lakers would. The easier team to play would be the Jazz as opposed to the Suns. But I think because it's a 1-game scenario, there's no tanking here, because you lose this game, 1 more game and you're out. So I think Lakers are going all out. All these teams in the play-in scenario, they'd rather win the first game and not have to face a possible loss the next game around. So no tanking in the play-in games for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing to consider is that if you lose this first game between LA and Golden State, you got to play another one. And you comment a little bit on the injury. LeBron James looking pretty good running up and down the court. But with an ankle injury, it's the lateral movements that are going to kill you on that. So I think, Lakers are the most efficient defensive team in the NBA. So I like them to lock up the Golden State Warriors. And they're in the bottom, I think, like 5 or 6 in offensive efficiency. But that kind of sort of doesn't matter when you have LeBron James and Anthony Davis doing their thing. When they're on and doing their 2-man game, that's tough for anybody to stop because both players are such mismatches. So I like the Lakers to take that 7 spot as well.
Moving to the other game on Wednesday night, the West game, Spurs at the Grizzlies. Obviously, it should be an interesting game. Common, who wins?
Yeah, I got to go with the Grizzlies here. I mean, you take a look at a lot of these 7, 8, 9, 10 games. A lot of the teams have very similar records. In this case, the Grizzlies were 38-34. The Spurs 33-39. I know it's only 5 games, but it points to the fact that Memphis is clearly the better team. They won 2 out of 3 this year, head-to-head, both by double figures. And I know we talked about it last week. The Spurs had a tough schedule down the stretch, but they lost their last 4, so they're not really entering this play-in game playing very good basketball. I know the argument for the Spurs would be that they have Greg Popovich, the better coach. He can devise a 1-game master plan and beat the Spurs, or rather the Spurs can beat the Grizzlies, but I don't see it because DeMar DeRozan is really their only really good player. Memphis, also more of a team by committee. but they've got more balance, more youth. I think Ja Morant and company will have much more athleticism. And keep in mind, Ja Morant went over 40 points one of the games earlier this season against the Spurs, and then he had like a 19-point game, 11 assist game also. So the Spurs have had a really hard time guarding Ja Morant this season, and I think that's going to continue in this game. I think Memphis wins that game, holds serve at home, and we kind of see the higher seeds winning those 7, 8, 9, 10 matchups in the West.
Yeah, there's about a 5-game difference in the win-loss column, but looking at some other statistics, these teams are actually pretty evenly matched in terms of points per game, field goal percentage, and three-point field goal percentage. I think even coming down to, assists per game, they're within about a 1 assist per game. So they seem a lot more evenly matched up on paper with a little bit of digging. So I think it'll be a really, really close game. I think it'll be a really tight game because Memphis, even though we're outside of the Zach Randolph and Tony Allen era of like that really tough defense, Memphis still plays with a lot of that grit. And then when you match that up against Greg Popovich and his ability to devise a game plan, it's going to be a really compelling game in a different sort of way. It's not going to have that star power that is woefully put on the back burner as far as East Coast scheduling. I mean, that's something that we just touched on a little bit, but like if you're looking to grow the game with two of your most important players in the league, LeBron and Steph, you put that at 8 o'clock Eastern and you tell the people on the West Coast, eat a quick dinner. But back to San Antonio and Memphis, I like the Grizzlies as well, simply for the fact that I think their star, Ja Morant, is going to have a slightly better game than the Spurs star in DeMar DeRozan. I think it will be tight, but I can see Ja Morant going off and taking kind of that next step in his progression as a young player the second year in the league.
Interesting. I think I like the Spurs in this matchup on the road. Greg Popovich, as you guys mentioned, 19 and 17, the Spurs away from San Antonio. So they're a pretty good road team. They've been a pretty good road team. And I just think DeMar DeRozan and, Derek White, those guys, also DeJounte Murray, I think those guys going to be able to lead this team to victory Wednesday night.
I look for Dylan Brooks from Memphis to have a good game as well. Actually, if he didn't have foul trouble there down the stretch against the Warriors, possibly it could be, Golden State having to play in this game. I do think it's an either way. I think there's kind of two games that I think could go completely either way. This is one of them, but I do feel good on Memphis. I think the youth that Memphis has is just going to be too much for San Antonio, especially late in the season. I think if you look at how bad the Spurs have played late in the year, it's partially because some of those older guys aren't quite there. I know DeMar DeRozan has the playoff experience, but one would argue that it's not very positive playoff experience. Of course, remember Toronto winning that championship after DeMar DeRozan left. So
who are the two playoff teams in the West then? Who are the final two playoff teams in the West then, Common?
Yeah, I think it's going to be oddly enough, it's going to be a rematch of what we just saw on Sunday. We had the Warriors and Grizzlies playing for that 8 seed, Warriors and Grizzlies on Sunday, and we saw that Golden State beat Memphis, and I think it's going to be the same scenario. I think Golden State beats Memphis and gets that 8 seed. That final playoff spot out west. The Warriors are a very good home team, 25-11 at home. Tom talked about a star stepping up. Well, Stephen Curry against Ja Morant, like all due respect to Ja Morant, but that's a matchup where the Warriors superstar is much better than the Grizzlies superstar. And that would be the same scenario, whether it's the Lakers in that game or the Spurs. For sure, the loser of the Lakers and Warriors has the star power, has the playoff experience, which Memphis certainly lacks. I like Golden State beating Memphis in that game, just like they beat them on Sunday, and Golden State getting that 8 seed. And Golden State's a team to look out for. Tom, you talked about it. The Utah Jazz are very banged up. I know they said Donovan Mitchell may not even come back until mid-first round. And also, Utah Jazz have lost in the first round like 4 straight years or something. So that could be an 8-1 upset no matter what team plays in that game. I don't know if it'll happen. Let's see how it happens next week. We'll make our NBA predictions, and we'll hear if I'm confident enough to go with my gut there. But I do think the Lakers and Warriors ultimately both get in. The Lakers is a 7 seed, the Warriors is an 8 seed.
Yeah, it's a chalky West for me as well. I like Lakers and Warriors grabbing those last 2 spots.
Same here. Moving to the East, we got the Celtics and Wizards. The late game tomorrow night, 9 o'clock Eastern in Boston at TD Garden. Celtics favored by 2. Who you got, Common?
Yeah, you spoke about it there. Celtics favored by 2. And really, that's because they're at home. This game is such a toss-up. Celtics really had a very disappointing season. They finished just 500 this season despite all their talent. And they lost Jaylen Brown out for the season. Their sort of number 2 player there. And the Wizards, I know they finished 34-38, but they started 17-32. So they were 17-6 over the last 23 games. The Celtics have been just over 500 all year, finishing at 500 exactly. Hard to say. I would have gone Celtics if Jaylen Brown is there. But then again, on the Wizards side, Bradley Beal isn't 100% in this game. It's a total 50-50. It's a coin flip. If you're picking this game, you might as well take a coin and flip it. But I'm going to go with Boston for the sake of making a team, just because they've played much better at home than on the road this year. Washington has struggled on the road. And I think Russell Westbrook is going to have a horrible game. You look at his playoff career, 41% from field goal percentage in his career. Really a guy that's really struggled in the playoffs, even worse than his regular season field goal percentage. With Bradley Beal banged up, I expect a bad game for Westbrook. He still might get a triple-double, but it might be one of those 5 for 20 games from the field, and ultimately Westbrook costs the Wizards this game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be things tightening up a little bit for the Boston Celtics, as I think the Wizards have a pretty good shot of coming in and winning this game. They are on a roll, especially Russell Westbrook, where I think he's going to be on a mission to prove a lot of people wrong in terms of the type of player that he can be, and show that he can maybe be a little bit of a win-with player. He's certainly one of the most entertaining players to watch in the NBA. Let's see if he can be one of the more winning players in the NBA. I think Jason Tatum is obviously fantastic for the Wizards, but it's going to be another question similar to the Golden State Warriors. Who's going to go along with him? Is it going to be Kemba Walker relying on a little bit more of a vintage performance? Is it going to be Evan Fournier, who's had a pretty good season? Is it going to be Marcus Smart? Like, who's going to show up with Jason Tatum for the Celtics? I like the Wizards just a little bit better, chip on the shoulder, and Russ is a man on a mission right now. So I've got the Wizards winning this one, taking the 7th seed.
Yeah, I think the Wizards win as well. Russell Westbrook's going to have a great game, and it's going to be close, but I think the Celtics go down tomorrow night, or Tuesday night, tomorrow night.
I love it, since you guys are both going against me, and that's why I picked the Celtics, because I knew you guys were both going to go against me. And might as well be contrarian when you're not sure. So I mean, I've got my penny here. Maybe I'll flip it. What do you guys think? Boston should be heads or tails?
I don't
Heads.
know.
Uh-oh. It's tails. So
I don't know.
maybe
you
the
want to
coin
flip, Simon? There's plenty of room on the Russ bandwagon still. It's not too late. It's never too late.
I'm never hopping on that bandwagon, ever, ever, ever. So let's go with Boston. But that will be certainly a good game. The other game, Drew, also seems to be a pretty close matchup as well.
Yeah, I think the next matchup, 6:30 Eastern, Hornets at Pacers. The Hornets, they've been my team all season, so I'm gonna go with Charlotte getting it done. At least take them +3 against the Pacers. Common, who you got?
Oh, I'm going the other way on this one, Indiana. So I'm loving going against you in a lot of these games, which will make for some fun bragging rights. Charlotte's played some horrible basketball, Drew. I know you picked them to make the playoffs. This technically does not count as a playoff appearance unless they get through the play-in tournament, and I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think you'll be wrong. I think they're playing awful the last 5-10 games. They've lost 5 straight. They're 3-7 in their last 10 games, with wins over the Pistons and the Magic. They beat the Pistons twice, so they beat the second second and third worst teams in the NBA are their only wins. Meanwhile, Indiana finishing the year on a good note. 4-3 in their last 7 games, beat the 76ers and the Hawks, 2 good teams. 1-point loss to the Wizards in overtime, also lost to the Lakers and Bucks. So they've played a lot of really good playoff teams, which leads me to believe that they're sort of playoff ready because they've been in that playoff mode down the stretch playing good teams. And for me, if Gordon Hayward were there, maybe you go with Charlotte, but I think this Charlotte team is very young. Gordon Hayward, their second leading scorer, out due to injury. Terry Rozier is their leading scorer. But then you look at their other leading guys. LaMelo Ball is third in scoring. He's 19 years old. Then Devontae Graham, 26. But, he was like a 4-year guy in college. He hasn't played much in the NBA. P.J. Washington, Miles Bridges, 23. Malik Monk, 23. All young, unproven college stars. Haven't quite worked out in the NBA. Cody Zeller, another guy that was a college star on the roster. None of those guys are necessarily bad, but they're a little bit below average, which has led to Charlotte being a little bit under 500 on the season. So I like Indiana in this game because they have the all-star in Domantas Sabonis, a big man that can pass, shoot, rebound, defend, no weaknesses. Karis LeVert and Malcolm Brogdon, 2 other guys who both score more than 20 points per game. All 3 players averaging in that 20 to 21 point per game difference. More proven scorers, more proven players, especially with no Gordon Hayward. I definitely like Indiana in this game for sure.
Yeah, this is, I think, to me, the least compelling of the play-in matchup, simply because neither team really has true star power. I mean, you could argue LaMelo Ball and Domantas Sabonis, but those guys are I'd say like second-tier stars at best. I mean, for a toss-up game, I think I'll go with the younger team. I think I'll go with Charlotte playing without, kind of like they don't know what they're supposed to be afraid of type of thing. I'll just go with the Hornets as a little bit of an upset pick as well out in the East. I went chalk in the West. I'm going upsets in the East.
Yeah, love it. Love it. All right. Well, who's getting the final 2 playoff spots in the East? Common? I'm guessing it's chalk.
Yeah, I'm going chalk with this one for sure. I think first off, no matter what, the winner of the Boston. Actually, you know what? I'm technically going. Well, yeah, I'm going chalk. A lot of these teams are close. It's hard to say, but I think the loser of the Boston-Washington game, to me, definitely is going to get the 8 seed. Again, I said it could go either way. I picked Boston to get the 7 seed. I think Boston and Washington both have more star power than Indiana or Charlotte, as Tom mentioned. They're better basketball teams. So I like that team beating whoever loses wins from the Pacers-Hornets game. So I think that we're going to see the 7-8 seeds kind of stay put. I think Boston is the 7 seed, gets the 7 seed, and then the 8 seed, I like Washington over Indiana in that last game for the final playoff spot in the East. So I am full chalk out here. So I'm probably going to miss one of them, and it probably is going to be Boston. They're the most likely to lose. But I like Boston getting the 7 in the East. Then I have Washington getting the 8. Then I've got the Lakers as the 7 in the West. And then the 8 seed in the West going to the Warriors. So basically, how the playoff seeds are now, I see them ending up that way come the actual playoffs. And by the way, I think the playing game, if anything, is almost better for the Lakers because they get a chance to get a more playing time for LeBron and Davis. Same for Boston, more playing time without Jason Tatum. And then Bradley Beal is banged up for Washington. Get him back healthy. So the playing games actually might end up being a positive for some of these lower seeded teams.
Yeah, I think for me, kind of coming out of the East, I'll go with the Celtics over the Hornets for that last spot. I mean, if Gordon Hayward were healthy, I certainly would like Charlotte to go a little bit farther into the playoffs and be a little bit of an intriguing team. But I think we'll go with a Boston team that is banged up, underachieving, and probably in for a short stay in the Eastern Conference playoffs.
Drew, are you
Celtics,
sticking with the Hornets? That's your team.
No. Wizards 7 seed and the Celtics 8 seed. They'll beat whoever they need to beat. The Hornets, I guess.
Yeah, Drew has backed off his Hornets playoff prediction. Certainly that 5-game losing streak, and maybe the Celtics slipping that low has him going against his team. By the way, for Boston, a lot of it is going to go down to Kemba Walker. Certainly there's a lot of issues there that are beyond Kemba Walker, and you can never scapegoat one player. But if you look at the guy that really has been the main problem in Boston this season, it's been Kemba Walker. Certainly they don't have a very deep team. Their bench could be better. But Kemba Walker was an all-star a few years ago for the Hornets, and he was not the third guy that he had to be this season for them. But we have seen him in the NCAA tournament turn up when the lights are on, and maybe now where he goes from the third option to the second option, maybe that can do him some good because they're going to need him if they're going to have any hope to beat, which would I guess would be the Nets, so they might as well forget about it. Nets or Sixers, they're not going to win anything, but they'll need the best from Kemba Walker to keep it competitive.
Yeah, should be exciting. We'll move on to the NHL as the playoffs are already underway. Avalanche won the President's Trophy, so they were the best team in the NHL record-wise. The playoffs are underway, guys. So you got winning the Stanley.
Well, they won this President's Cup trophy, but they actually tied with the Las Vegas Golden Knights. So I think it's not like a convincing win by any means. I think the Las Vegas Golden Knights are the team for me. They tied for the most points with the Avalanche. Can't say that right. They had the most wins, the best goal differential in hockey, least goals allowed, tied for third most scored. Marc Fleury in goal, 3-time Stanley Cup champion with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's going to be clutch in the playoffs, I think. A lot of balance on the team. Mark Stone leading the way with 61 points. But they've got 8 guys with more than 30 points in the shortened 56-game regular season. 7 guys with 14 or more goals. And they've got phenomenal defensive players behind Marc-Andre Fleury. So I like the Las Vegas Golden Knights a few years ago when they were the new expansion team. They lost in the Stanley Cup final. This year, despite losing game 1 in their series, I like them making the Stanley Cup and winning the Stanley Cup in Las Vegas. So a lot of the locals might be placing money on the Golden Knights, and they might be getting some cash in their pockets for sure.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Golden Knights as well, although to hedge the proverbial bet, I'd say pretty much whoever takes the West Division is the team that's going to win, given that the Avalanche and the Golden Knights are the 2 best teams so far this season, at least based on the regular season. And they're going to have to face each other to advance in this kind of rivalry format that the NHL does, where they have winners coming out of each region, and that's how they determine the Stanley Cup winner. It's not like your traditional NBA playoffs or what the Stanley Cup used to be a few years back, where it was your traditional 1 through 8 seed. So they're kind of doing this to build up a little bit of rivalry, just to give a little bit of context for the viewers on why we have 2 of the best teams potentially playing in the second round, which is just absolutely bonkers. I like the Las Vegas Golden Knights come hit on a lot of good points. They allowed the fewest goals as a team this season. Rob Leonard and Marc-Andre Fleury won the Jennings Trophy, so they're the primary goalkeepers on a team allowing the fewest goals, and they have the best goal differential. But, of course, the second team right behind them is the Colorado Avalanche, which is going to prove to be a true challenge and a really, really fun series, to be sure.
Yeah, and I think they're doing this. I might be mistaken, so you may want to fact check me. But I think that they're doing this a whole division by division, 4 divisions, 1 through 4. You play each other, you make it to the next round thing. I think it's just for this season, if I understood that correctly.
Didn't they do it last season?
They might have, but I think it's just one of those COVID things that they put in.
Yeah, possibly makes sense, I guess.
So you're going.
I don't know
I'm going to the fact check on that. I'm not. I know that they've changed it before, because I remember even when the Blues won, for example, they were playing like the Minnesota Wild. I think they try to keep it in division, but I'll check on that.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Avalanche. They have the most goals scored this season out of any team in the NHL, so They just have a lot of guys who can score, and they're going to be heavily favored against the Blues in that first round. Vegas not going to be too heavily favored as they lost the first game against the Wild. So I'm going to take the Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup.
The Blues are a dangerous team, though. I mean, I know they've lost some of their guys from the Stanley Cup champion team, but I mean, it was just a couple years ago that the Blues won the Stanley Cup. I do think the Avalanche get by them, but that is a tricky region. As always, you also got to keep in mind that the Pittsburgh Penguins and Washington Capitals are there with Crosby and Ovechkin, and both teams who have also won the Stanley Cup in recent years. But I mean, I like the Golden Knights. I like their name, I like their mascot, I like their look, and I like the way they play. So that's who I'm picking. Castleman, have you fact checked? Are you fact checking? How's the
watch out for the Hurricanes? By the way, Carolina has been good in recent years, and once again, they're number one seed this season as well, out of the Central Division.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, I'm checking out things now. Okay, so what they did in years prior to this, they did something that's kind of similar. So it was having the top two teams in the Atlantic and Metropolitan Division facing the third team in those respective divisions, and then a wild card team getting in. So they changed up the divisions this year, but the format's largely the same, where you're still facing everyone in your division before advancing on to the next round.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of both.
For the record, we got Las Vegas. We're V-valuing Las Vegas, Castleman and I, and Drew Brackett is all in on Colorado. Those are our picks. I'll be sure to see who's right, who's wrong, and as Tom mentioned, someone is probably going to be wrong very soon. So we'll keep you updated on how those playoffs are looking for the NHL.
Absolutely. Well, moving on to NFL, the schedule release was, I think, probably last week. Maybe it always gets a lot of attention on social media because, well, it's the NFL. So, but guys, what matchups are you looking forward to here in a few months?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, there's a few really appetizing matchups, just like full course, 5-course meal appetizing. That's how good they look on paper. Last week's show we recorded a little earlier in the week, so the schedule release coming out after our show. But I think the big one that a lot of people are looking for, the sort of obvious answer is the Bucs at the Patriots, Week 4. Tom Brady returns to New England. We're probably going to have fans in the seats. We're going to see how Bill Belichick and Tom Brady match up against each other, because it's such an interesting game, because both guys are such smart football minds and they both know each other so well. So you can say, well, Belichick will know how to prepare for Brady, but on the other end, Brady will know how to prepare for Belichick. And I think this year, New England is certainly getting some guys back. They had a lot of guys on the COVID list last season. They added some more weapons in free agency. Tampa Bay, by the way, signed all 22 starters off their Super Bowl team are back. So that's a big game that I'm looking for. Brady versus Belichick, round 1. And we'll see what happens with Tom Brady. Certainly, he's not going to be around forever. It is possible that is the one and only meeting they have against each other. So certainly going to be an iconic moment. A couple other games that I think are really intriguing. Week 5. So that was Week 4 Sunday Night Football. Week 5 Sunday Night Football. The Bills at the Chiefs. A rematch of last season's AFC Championship game. We know Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, probably the two quarterbacks in the NFL with the strongest arms. The two quarterbacks that can literally throw the ball pretty much a mile long. And two offenses that are really exciting. And those two teams are two teams that are probably going to be the front runners in the AFC for at least the next 5 years or so. So that is a very intriguing matchup that could become a rivalry, much like, almost dropped here, much like the Baltimore-Kansas City matchup. People wanted Mahomes versus Lamar Jackson rivalry. Well, Mahomes and the Chiefs have dominated that rivalry. So far, Mahomes and the Chiefs dominating the Bills. So that'll be interesting. And then put an asterisk on this one, if it happens, Week 9, Packers and Chiefs. It would be Mahomes versus Rodgers, if Rodgers is back in Green Bay, the two probably best quarterbacks in the NFL at this point. They both got those off-angle arm throws. Just two very talented players, two of the all-time great quarterbacks. In fact, I believe they're like 1-2 in career passer rating, or they might be 1-3. I know Deshaun Watson is in that mix as well, but that would be an amazing game seeing Mahomes and Rodgers go at it. It would also be their first ever matchup against each other. They played each other a couple years ago. Mahomes was injured, didn't play in that game. So for me, those are kind of the three games I look forward to. Also, Bears-Packers getting Justin Fields, hopefully first chance to go against Green Bay if he's starting at that point.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a bit of a cop-out to say it, but for me, I mean, first game of the season is the one that is the most appetizing, the one that I'm looking forward to the most,
Really?
simply because of what it kind of symbolizes and what it kind of stands for. I mean, we went into last season with a lot of uncertainty given everything that was happening internationally. This might be the first game where it's going to feel pretty normal, where we're going to have more fans in stands. And this game is, kind of that literal and also symbolic kickoff of a new season as we're kind of coming out of a big global nightmare. So that's why for me, like, I'm looking forward to just, nice and simple, just first game of the season, just Dallas in Tampa Bay. I think it'll be a great game, absolutely, because we got two really good offenses, and we'll see how Dallas's defense looks this season, hopefully improved over last season.
Can't be any worse.
It'd be difficult to be any worse, but that's certainly what I'm looking at. I also like the Kansas City-Baltimore game in week 2. And then a game that I'm actually circling as a bit of a homer is a Bears game. The first one of the season is they're playing the LA Rams. Very real chance that we can see Justin Fields. I know that there is some talk that Andy Dalton's going to get that start at the beginning of the season as Matt Nagy coming from KC. They had Alex Smith starting for pretty much a full season before Patrick Mahomes took over. Couple key differences, though. Alex Smith was an established starter who'd taken the Chiefs to the playoffs in years prior. Andy Dalton is learning the same playbook that Justin Fields is at the same rate, basically. And looking at the Bears schedule, it's a really tough one. There's no real easy way to kind of like ease Justin Fields into the starting role in the midseason portion of the year. So I'm circling that as a really intriguing game, seeing a rookie quarterback and what he can do in what is hopefully an exciting season for some downtrodden Bears fans.
Mm-hmm. That'd be a tough matchup, by the way, to go against the Rams. Arguably,
they're
the
all
top
tough
defense.
matchups. The Bears have a brutal schedule. That's all tough.
Right, but that's arguably the top defense in the NFL right out of the gate. But I think
prepare for it.
Real quickly, just my general thoughts on it. As they tell us at Mizzou Journalism, learn by doing. Well, I'm a believer in learn by doing. I think there are times where a guy can learn from the bench, but it's never quite the same when you're studying the playbook as opposed to when you get put on the field, when you've got, 300-pound athletic offensive linemen chasing you and the speed of the NFL. You can't pick that up by going on the field. So my belief is if you're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, you better throw him out there as soon as possible. Unless you have, as you mentioned, someone who's very established. But I hope Justin Fields starts in Chicago. I would love to see it. I hope he starts week 1, and I hope he plays all 16 games. And Andy Dalton came to Chicago because they told him that he would be the number 1 quarterback. But what was he thinking? Did he really think that would happen? Not very smart thinking on Andy Dalton's part.
Hey, for $10 million, that's smart enough for me.
True.
Yes, the money. Well, I'm looking forward to NFL Red Zone. 7 hours of commercial-free football. You can't beat that. So those are the games. Of course, those are the games I'll be looking forward to on Sunday, watching just every game.
Interesting. Well, that is definitely going to be exciting for sure. But that's why I like those Sunday night games. The Bucks Patriots. That's the one. Even the red zone lovers like me and you, on Sunday night and Monday night, you kind of pick out that one game, and that's why the games I listed are all on Sunday Night Football except for the Packers Chiefs. But don't be surprised if that gets flexed. I bet you that they might have put that on there, knowing that it's possible that if Rodgers doesn't come back, we don't want like a Packers beat down by the Chiefs. So
See, I don't watch the whole Sunday night football game or Monday night football game because they start so late.
It's past your bedtime.
I get a half and then it's bedtime.
You need those COVID 3 p.m. starts so you can watch the full games on Monday or Tuesday
Absolutely.
or Wednesday or whatever they're playing.
Need those 4 o'clock Eastern games.
Well, I think it's going to be exciting because the NFL, knock on wood, is we all get vaccinated, and reports are that the NFL would like to have, no capacity limitations. It's quite possible that the NFL actually ends up being the first league where we do see 100% fans in the stands for the whole season. I don't know if that's going to happen, but if it does, Tom talking about a return to normalcy, that in itself would be very normal seeing, because there is a difference having 10,000 fans versus having 40,000, 50,000, in NFL arenas, 60, 70, whatever. It does make a difference the amount of fans you have, especially for football where it's not like outdoor, where it is outdoor. Indoor, sometimes like a packed arena with less fans, you can still produce a lot of noise. But in football, I do think that makes a difference for sure.
Absolutely. And one more quick game I'm going to throw in is one to circle because I missed this the first time around. A potential Super Bowl matchup. It's ill-advised on my part to say so, but a potential Super Bowl matchup week 2, looking at the Los Angeles Rams at the Indianapolis Colts. Circle that one because we might be having a February preview in September.
Who's the Colts quarterback?
Carson Wentz. We're going for a bounce back this year.
Yeah,
everything's bouncing back.
Tom Castleman adopted the Colts as his NFL team that he liked besides the Bears. Last season, he was riding the Colts hard, and he rode them into barely sneaking into the playoffs and losing their first game. He had them with a washed-up quarterback in Phillip Rivers, and now they took him out for another washed-up quarterback in Carson Wentz. Granted, a couple of years younger, but also a little bit worse when you look at his performances. So, boy, that would be something.
I think he'll rehabilitate just fine with a better offensive line and better coaching out in Indianapolis.
Well, as we said about the Cowboys defense, it certainly can't get any worse for Carson Wentz, as he was just about at the bottom of just about every offensive category this past season. But Castleman is predicting a rebound season, and we don't know if it's going to happen, but certainly that's what he's going with. I'm anticipating next week when he might pick the Blazers to make a surprise run in the NBA playoffs also. He's got to go with his teams,
We'll see.
Thankfully, my team is the Lakers, so my chances are much, much better. And the Chiefs also, of course. That's
it just happens to go for the two inarguably best teams in each conference.
He's falling from Barcelona. They suck, basically. So soon enough, he'll be a Real Madrid fan in due time.
Will never, ever, ever be a Real Madrid fan. But yes, I still rep Barcelona despite their awful performances. But Leo Messi did get a goal this weekend, and it was the only goal the team scored, and another dreadful loss. And third place finish in Spain. I think the last time they finished in third was maybe like 2007. So things are not looking good. But
speaking of results there, how'd the Locks do this week?
Well, the Locks actually, Drew Brackett, you did not do as well. You've been doing great with your soccer unders, but man, you had a few bad picks. Clearly, you need to brush up on your Portugal Segunda League, the second division of Portugal. You don't know very much about it because you had FC Porto B and Farenses under 2.5 goals. FC Porto B won 4-2, 6 goals. What happened there, Mr. Brackett? That was a tough loss.
The offense woke up.
Sunday morning, Japanese 2 league. You did get this one right. Kyoto Sanga versus Mito Holyhog under 2.5 goals. Kyoto Sanga pulling out the 1-0 win there. And then Turkish league, you just missed. You had Sivasspor versus Kasımpaşa under 2.5 goals. And Sivasspor, it was 2-1, 3 total goals So 1-2 week for Drew Brackett. We had back-to-back like 7-2 or 8-1 weeks. This week, not as good for the show. I was also 1-2. Finally, after a couple really good weeks, I got the Dodgers -1.5 over the Mariners. Dodgers winning 6-4, winning by 2. I got lucky there. They got like a big 3-run homer in the 8th inning. So it was looking like an 0-3 week for me, but got that one right. Then, man, I just missed. And I was watching this game, looking at our locks of the week. Lakers-Knicks. I had the Lakers -3 over the Knicks. Lakers win by 2 in overtime, 101-99. They're up 2 with like 10 seconds left. I'm just like, Knicks jack up a shot and miss, get the rebound, foul, get 2 free throws, make it a 4-point win. And RJ Barrett, clearly too young. That Duke education or lack of education, because he didn't really spend much time studying there, not paying off. He waited till the last second to jack up a 3 from like so deep with a man in his face, completely bricked it. Lakers get the rebound. Clock is run out by that time. No time to foul. So I was riding the Lakers going 4-0 down the stretch. I was right. They'd beat the Knicks, but I needed them to win by 4. They only won by 2. And then I had the Suns -4.5 over the Warriors. Suns were up about 6 at halftime. They're up a decent amount in the third quarter. Dreadful fourth quarter. Warriors get the 6-point win and a 1-2 week for me. Tom, still in last place, but gaining on Drew and I. And really, at this point, he's getting very close. Another good week, 2-1. He had the White Sox over the Twins. Sox winning 9-3. Nets -4.5 over the Bulls. Correct. The Nets won by 8. And then you had the Marlins over the D-backs. He missed that one. D-backs winning 11-3. So things are heating up. Things are heating up. Very close battle among the three of us. I think Drew is literally percentage points ahead of me, but certainly should be behind me after this week. And Tom Castleman probably 2 to 3 weeks away from evening up on the season with us.
Yeah, it all depends on how things go. So I'll just go ahead and get things kicked off with my card. Not a whole lot on the docket for tonight on baseball. But I'm going to go with the Chicago White Sox on the money line over the Twins again at -110. Let's see. I think I like the Dodgers over covering the 1.5 run line on the Diamondbacks at even money. And then I'll go out and go for a little bit of plus money here. I like the Wizards to beat the Celtics, so I'm going to take them plus 105 on the money line. You can pay juice if you want to go for that 2-point cover, but I'm not going to be going for a tie or 1 point. I'm going for the whole enchilada there. So Wizards over Celtics, White Sox over Twins, and Dodgers over Diamondbacks. Walker Buehler against Madison Bumgarner tonight. So 2 baseball tonight, 1 basketball game tomorrow.
Yeah, so Tom's getting that enchilada. He's getting the steak, the chicken, the shrimp, the fajitas, and everything. He's not messing around there with his enchilada. By the way, we have a same pick again. Last week, you had two of your picks on your card, and you didn't pick them, and you asked me how I felt. I think we went 1-1 with those picks. We did. This week, I'm going White Sox over the Twins money line. This actually scares me because this is almost one of those lines that's too good to be true, and then it ends up being wrong, much like the Dolphins and Broncos last season. But the White Sox are 24-15. The Twins are 13-25. The White Sox are 8-2 in their last 10 games. The Twins are 2-8. The White Sox just swept the Twins last week, a 3-game sweep. And you look at J.A. Happ, Minnesota's starter in this game. He allowed 9 runs in 3 1/3 innings against the White Sox last week. So the White Sox on paper should win this game and should win by a big margin. So I'm going White Sox. The fact that Tom and I both went White Sox, things may not end up well, but we're going White Sox. And then I'm going to go to the NBA. One game that I really like is, in fact, the Pacers, -3 over the Hornets. Both of you guys picking the Hornets to get the upset. Both of you sleeping on the Pacers. I talked about it earlier in the show. I'm sorry if I'm too repetitive, but those are the notes I have. Charlotte losing 5 straight, 3-7 in their last 10 games, beating only the Pistons and Magic, who are the second and third worst teams in the NBA. They beat the Pistons twice, by the way. Pacers 4-3 in their last 7 games. They beat the 76ers. They beat the Hawks, barely losing to the Wizards, also losing to the Lakers and Bucks. They're playing good basketball. The Hornets are a very young team. Gordon Hayward is out due to injury, and pretty much, 3 through 7, 8, all their leading scorers outside of Terry Rozier are all really young. LaMelo Ball is 19, PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, 23, Malik Monk, 23, all young, unproven guys out of college. Michael Jordan drafts those stars out of college, and they don't quite deliver at the next level. I don't think they're going to deliver in this game. I like Domantas Sabonis, the all-star for the Pacers, Karis LeVert, Malcolm Brogdon, 3 players getting more than 20 points per game. I like Indiana covering 4 points there, no problem. And speaking of roughly a 4-point line, Grizzlies -4 over the Spurs. Memphis won 2 out of 3 in the regular season. In fact, they won by 17 and 31 points in those 2 games. Memphis just has the better team. They had 5 more wins this season. They've got the athleticism against an aging Spurs team. They've got Ja Morant. He had 44 points against San Antonio earlier this season. Also a 19-point, 11-assist game. He's been great against them. I don't see how San Antonio stops Ja Morant in this game as he takes that next step, as Tom Castleman likes to say in his career, gets his team to the playoffs. I know they just barely missed out on the playoffs last season. They were basically in the play-in game there in the bubble. This season, they go one step further. Memphis beats San Antonio by 4 or more, or 5 or more, whatever it is now.
There you go. Love it. Well, I'm going to shy away from baseball, NBA, and the NBA, of course. I'm going to go to the WNBA Tuesday night.
No soccer. Interesting.
The Las Vegas Aces against the Seattle Storm. The Aces favored by 1.5. I'll take them on the road over the Storm. So
really?
Aces, over -1.5.
Over Sue Bird? Is that
Absolutely.
Sue Bird? Oh, give me Sue Bird. I like the Storm in that one. Oh, that's a terrible
NHL playoffs tomorrow afternoon. Calgary versus Vancouver. Under 1.5 first period goals. I don't think there'll be a lot of scoring in that first period. And then we'll go to soccer Wednesday morning, K-League 1. That's the South Korean league. This time the A-League, or the best league maybe. It's going to be Gwangju versus Jeju United. Under 2.5 goals in that contest, that game, Wednesday morning.
So clearly Drew has realized his strategy of he has to pick the A division league in a lower country to win, because your A division picks have been really good. Your B division have started to trend downwards a little bit. Although I do think you got the J2 league, so I don't know. But you're like probably 75% on the A division and like 50-50 on the B division.
Well, I figure I try the K League, see what happens.
That's wonderful. The K League. I like how the South Korean league is the K League and the Japanese league is the J League.
That's what it says. I didn't make that one up. That's what it says.
Oh, I'm sure.
I know you'll be watching, so
I'll have
5 a.m. Central Time.
Oh gosh, I'll be in bed.
You'll be up still. Who knows?
No, I'll be in bed by then.
I think you stopped that habit.
No, I don't stay up till 5. Well,
wait a minute.
I did stay up till 5 a.m. The other day, but that was an exception.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to Locks of the Week. I think it's going to be a good week. And next week, we'll actually do our full NBA playoff breakdown. I was debating when to do it, but I think next week will be good. I think we'll be a couple days into the playoffs, but by then, I don't think anything too dramatic would have happened. And maybe it'll give me more insight into some upsets. Warriors maybe upsetting the Jazz. The Lakers upsetting the Suns. I don't know if that's considered an upset, but technically by seeding it would be.
We'll see what our friends in the desert think.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy is I was very high on the Suns. Like week 1 into the NBA season, we did the overreaction, underreaction segment. And I said the Suns are going to be awesome. Suns are going to be a top 2 seed in the West, which is what I thought. I thought the Suns would be the number 1, number 2 seed behind the Lakers. Lakers had the injuries. The Suns get the 2 seed. I had predicted the Suns making the Western Conference Finals because, and I think they would if they didn't have to play the Lakers in the first round. This is very like crazy because in hockey we have the Avalanche and the Golden Knights maybe playing each other in the second round, the two best teams in hockey. Then in the NBA we've got like arguably, two of the top 3 or 4 teams in the league playing each other in the first round. So it'll be wild. I think it's going to be absolutely bonkers. I think this is one of those rare years. You look at the Western Conference. I mean, it's possible that every series goes to 6, 7 games. I think Jazz, Warriors, Lakers, Suns, Clippers, Mavericks. That'll be really good. That was a great series last year. And what is it? The Nuggets and Blazers. I mean, that should be tight also. We're going to have some amazing games out west. I think out east, it might look more chalkish in the first round. But out west, man, those playoffs are going to be something.
Salute statement time?
Yeah, salute statement time. Drew, let's start with you. Short and sweet. What you got?
Of course. Well, the what happened? Yeah, it was the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame 2020 inductees. They were inducted Sunday night, Sunday evening. So salute to them. And salute to Vanessa Bryant, who gave Kobe Bryant's speech. It was an awesome speech, truly incredible. So, hats off to all the inductees, and then of course Vanessa Bryant, who just a heck of a speech.
Yeah, I was gonna have Tom go second, but I'll go second because we're kind of on the same topic. That was my salute, saluting those guys getting their presentation. They were supposed to get a presentation last year, actually. Because of COVID, it got pushed back to this year. Obviously, really cool moment. Natalia Bryant, Kobe Bryant's daughter, putting on the jacket. And it was it was one of those classes to me that kind of sticks out because it's guys I grew up watching. It was Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, and Kobe Bryant, who were 3 of, arguably the top 5 best players.
Those are the most notable players.
Well, right. But those are the guys.
Tomjanovich, Kim Mulkey.
Right. I'm not saying, Kim Mulkey, by the way, I covered a game my freshman year at Mizzou, and she went nuts on some student reporter who asked her if the crowd made a difference in Mizzou's upset of Baylor and Brittany Griner. And she said, no, we have 12,000 fans in our seats, in our stadium always. Why does the Mizzou fans only have 1,000? Guys, go out and support that team. Nonetheless, a couple years later, Sophie Cunningham comes around. So do the Mizzou fans. The Tigers got their support eventually. But I know there's other people. There's so many great players. But I think of the NBA guys. I'm sorry if I'm being mean to the coaches or the women's players, but I think of Garnett, Duncan, and Kobe Bryant. And these are 3 guys who are arguably 3 of the top 5 players that I grew up watching, pretty much witnessed their whole careers. And that's what's neat now. The Hall of Famers are guys who I really watched. I know I'm a nerd and I watch a lot of old games on YouTube. ESPN Classic till they got rid of it, NBA TV. I've watched a lot of classic players, but those are guys I saw kind of mature in front of my own eyes. Those are the guys that got their induction. The 2021 class was also announced, headlined by Chris Webber, Paul Pierce, and many, many more. You can look up the class online. Don't want to leave out anyone, but I do have a statement when it comes to Hall of Fame guys. Certainly, KG, Duncan, Kobe deserved it. Certainly Chris Webber, Paul Pierce deserve it. But some guys who made the Hall of Fame, I question. And one of them for sure is Ben Wallace getting put into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame for next year. Ben Wallace, are you kidding me?
One of the best defenders of all time.
Wallace in the Hall of Fame. 4-time Defensive Player of the Year. I know, but he's never, ever been an all-NBA first-team guy ever. Career averages of 5.7 points and 9.6 rebounds. A lot of guys can do that in the NBA. I know he was a good shot blocker. I know he was a good defender. But my goodness, he's a guy who's never scored 10 points per game in any of his seasons. And he wasn't as great of a rebounder as Dennis Rodman. I know Rodman is a Hall of Fame guy, but he won more championships, and he was an even better defender, an even better rebounder. I struggle with how Ben Wallace is in the Hall of Fame. Chris Bosh getting in, he's more 50-50. But even Chris Bosh, under 20 points per game in his career, I could go either way with Chris Bosh. But I believe the NBA Hall of Fame should be for the truly all-time elite players. And sorry to burst people's bubbles, but offense matters a little bit more when looking at an individual. You can impact the game more as an offensive player. Ben Wallace is a center in the paint. He can't guard a guard that's going hot. He can get the rebound if they miss, but he wasn't a guy that was guarding necessarily the best player on the other team as a center power forward. And he's a guy who shot talk about hack a Shaq. Shaq was like 50%. Ben Wallace was like 40% from free throws. He had so much deficiency in his game that there is no way that he belongs in the National Basketball Hall of Fame. I just don't like it. And outside of Major League Baseball, which Major League Baseball has a very thorough process, maybe they're unfair to, some of the steroid guys. Maybe they're unfair to Pete Rose because of the betting. But overall, baseball, it truly is an honor to make the Hall of Fame. You look at basketball, it's like they'll let anybody in. So we need to tighten up the Hall of Fame. It has to be for the truly best guys. The NFL also, by the way, lets in a little bit too many guys as well. So I would like to see NFL, NBA make it a little tougher to make the Hall of Fame. Make it like for the truly all-time great players to make the Hall of Fame. You can be a very good player and not make the Hall of Fame. You should be a great player to make the Hall of Fame. And to me, Ben Wallace was a very good player because of his defense, but he had so many deficiencies. I mean, he was a horrific offensive player, one of the all-time worst. So there's no way that guy belongs in the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry.
I'm pretty much, I agree with you on that.
No, I'm going to interrupt you,
okay,
Cam. Not at all, dude. During his time, you have to remember who he had to face, right? It wasn't just, LaMarcus Aldridge over there. He had to face Shaq, Yao Ming, Jermaine O'Neal. These guys were rough and tough in the 90s. Dennis Rodman. I mean, it wasn't
Rodman was before him. They barely played together.
All right, well, Wallace played for 16 years, so I guess Rodman's career wasn't very lengthy, but
no, Rodman played in the 80s and 90s.
Sure.
But anyway, and my point is, though, a lot of those guys you mentioned are actually Western Conference centers. I'm not saying he didn't play them, but you look at the dominant big guys like Shaq, Duncan, KG, those guys were mostly in the Western Conference. Ben Wallace was over there in the cozy East with the great teammates that he had with Detroit. So Ben Wallace in the Hall of Fame is just laughable.
He had more all defensive teams than Dikembe Mutombo. He had the exact same number of Defensive Player of the Years as Dikembe Mutombo.
Right. Look
he has a more NBA title than Dikembe Mutombo. I mean, he had the better stats. Not points.
Okay.
But he had the better honors. The awards were better.
That's the difference between Ben Wallace and Dikembe Mutombo. Dikembe Mutombo was a solid offensive player and a phenomenal defensive player. Ben Wallace was a phenomenal defensive player and a horrendous offensive player. Do not compare Ben Wallace to Dikembe Mutombo.
Well,
not in here.
You're just talking about stats.
No, Block. No.
One of the greatest days ever will be when Russell Westbrook gets inducted into the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame because of all the great stats he's put up.
And Russell Westbrook would be much more deserving than Ben Wallace. That much is certain. As much as I don't like Westbrook, I can see him making the Hall of Fame because he is setting records. The only records Ben Wallace is setting is like most free throw misses in a row or something. He was like so bad. Like literally, if Ben Wallace and me went out right now at the park and shot free throws, I would smoke Ben Wallace at free throws. I would smoke him. I'm a good free throw shooter, by the way.
Well, sure. Andy's old now.
Well, yeah, he couldn't shoot then, though. I could shoot better than 40% from free throws.
And also keep in mind that this is the Basketball Hall of Fame. This isn't the NBA Hall of Fame. And of course, Mr. Wallace was the MVP of the 1996 NCAA Division II tournament.
Oh, Division II. That just about speaks to where his talent level belongs.
He was the best at that level.
Oh, shake my head. It's unbelievable how they'll let anyone in these days. Unbelievable.
I mean, baseball has the worst Hall of Fame.
It has the best, other than the fact that they've got like a sort of bias towards maybe some guys who, you know, the steroid era, but taking away.
I mean, the guy who's the all-time home run leader is not going to make the Hall of Fame. That's a disgrace.
I agree with that for most players, but baseball, outside of the steroid era guys and the guys with questionable character or gambling decisions, whatever, baseball, they actually make you earn it. Like, there's like a lot of really good baseball players who don't make the Hall of Fame because the Hall of Fame should be for the very best. And you argue that it's not just about like the NBA. Well, that's the thing with Ben Wallace is he wasn't like a huge Division II. I'm sorry, Drew. You cannot say that the Division II player means that much. I do think another guy that made the Hall of Fame, but I can see why he made it, is like each federation, the North American, European, all get a chance to pick their guy. So Tony Kukoc making the Hall of Fame, a guy that, you know, by NBA standards doesn't deserve it. But if you look at European players who have played in the NBA, then I can see why Tony Kukoc would make the Hall of Fame. So congrats to Tony Kukoc, one of my first NBA loves, actually, because I moved to America right after the Bulls era, and all those players from Jordan's team, they were pretty much all gone. It was pretty much Tony Kukoc and Randy Brown were left, and Randy Brown didn't do anything but warm the bench and eat his popcorn to watch the Jordan show. So Tony Kukoc was pretty much the only legit Bulls player left off those championship teams, and he played on horrendous teams with Tim Floyd, the coach, was the coach there, former USC guy, and I really liked Tony Kukoc because he was the best player on the Bulls and kind of reminded me of those 90s era wins. So happy for Tony Kukoc. He got in because of the European Federation voted him in. Happy for Ben Wallace. Here's the key to life. If you get overrated at what you do and people give you more appreciation than you deserve, good for you.
All right, well, let me give you these stats. Ben Wallace is one of two players in NBA history to win the Defensive Player of the Year 4 times. He had All-NBA honors 5 times. He was the first undrafted player to be voted an All-Star starter. He had 4 All-Star appearances. That's the most by any. That's the most by any undrafted player, as are his rebound totals and career games. I mean, he played for 16 years. He didn't even get drafted. You got to give him some credit.
Yeah, the best player that doesn't get drafted, but you don't get credit for, like, that shouldn't matter whether you get drafted or not. It's about your accolades. And you said it for me right there.
Okay, he's one of the best defensive players of all time.
So that means that in his 16-year career, 1/4 of his career, he was deemed the top 20 player in the NBA in the league currently playing. So for most of his career, they didn't recognize him as a top 20 player in the NBA. So we're going to put a guy in who wasn't recognized as a top 20 player in the NBA in the Basketball Hall of Fame. That is ridiculous.
He was the number 1 defensive player for probably 10 years. Maybe 15.
He had 3 or 4 really good seasons. Like, if you look at his rebounding totals, he had a couple years where he was 12, 13 rebounds. Most of his career, he was under 10 rebounds, most seasons. And there's a lot of guys in the NBA now that get more than 10 rebounds, and there always has been a lot of guys that get more than 10 rebounds. He was also a product of a very good team. He's sort of like Draymond Green. He gets a lot of credit because he's sort of that glue guy, gets those rebounds. Well, you know what? Like, the Pistons had Tayshaun Prince, Richard Hamilton, Chauncey Billups, Rasheed Wallace.
Yeah, scorers.
No, those were guys like Tayshaun Prince was a fantastic defender. So Tayshaun Prince would force a miss and Ben Wallace would get the rebound. Some of those stats were helped by his team that he played for. And he also played in an era where there wasn't as much scoring. So if you look at the basketball eras when he played in the 90s and early 2000s, those were some of the lowest scoring eras in NBA history. You look at the 80s, they scored a lot more points. Now they score a lot more points. So there was a lot more misses back then. So I think he was padding on some of his rebounding stats. He was like,
he wasn't like Russell Westbrook. No, he wasn't padding his rebounding stats. That has nothing to do with rebounding. I don't think he got in for his rebounding numbers. He got in for his blocks, his defense, and just to disrupt the other teams.
I mean, 2 blocks a game in his career, though. There's a lot of guys who average more blocks than 2 a game in his career. I don't buy it.
It was the 90s, man. Nobody scored. So, I mean, you got to give him credit that he went out there and just played great defense every night, even though it was just the rough and tough game. But now it's soft. I mean, you shove a guy and there's a brawl, you get ejected, whereas you've had to punch a guy, basically throw him to the ground and kick him while he's down to get thrown out then.
I like how we're going to say that that Ben Wallace played during one of the lowest scoring eras, and not attribute that to the fact that is when Ben Wallace was playing.
Yeah, I know it is.
I thought you agreed with me. You're trying to go against me.
I mostly do. Like, in terms of like a statistical argument, sure, but like halls of fame are museums. They're meant to tell the story of the sport, and you can't mention early 2000s basketball without Fear the Fro with Ben Wallace, a player who was so fearsome. This, in spite of his deficiencies, in spite of the fact that he wasn't a great offensive player, and yet teams had to respect what he was doing. I completely get it from a statistical standpoint why you can make the argument, but also you could say he was arguably one of the most important players on a championship team that beat one of the first super teams that we saw with those LA Lakers, or it was Shaq and Kobe, and they brought on Gary Payton and Karl Malone for a little bit of ring chasing, and the Detroit Pistons spoiled all of that. So I get the argument on both sides. I tend to lean he does not belong in the Hall of Fame, but I'm not going to besmirch the man for those accolades.
No, great accolades. I agree.
Yeah.
But maybe Drew and I will go talk for 2 hours off air. But I think I
am not talking for 2 hours off air. Not a chance.
Your phone might get blown up with 42 text messages.
Oh, Lord.
we'll talk about that one later.
Multi-paragraphs.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we can go a couple different directions, because I too had a statement regarding this past Hall of Fame class. So just a quick statement on that. This is probably top 2 all-time Hall of Fame class when you look at the players they got in, not just NBA but WNBA. You got Tim Duncan, the best power forward of all time. Kevin Garnett, not too far behind. Kobe Bryant. And then if you look on the WNBA side, the player that puts it maybe over the list, where 2009 is the other class, by the way. Michael Jordan, John Stockton, David Robinson is the NBA headliners, but Tamika Catchings getting in this year, the WNBA all-time leader in win shares at 93.6, about 20 more win shares than the next person in second place, also a 4-time gold medalist. So just a star-studded class this year with everybody getting in. But since we've devoted so much time to the NBA Hall of Fame, you know me and how I like rules changes and proposing those sorts of things.
Oh, here we go.
Talked a little bit about tanking in the NBA, and typically tanking is for teams wanting to get a better draft position. But we also saw towards the end of this NBA season, teams tanking for playoff position, where the LA Clippers, for example, don't have to face the prospect of the Lakers until the Western Conference Finals. We saw Denver doing that a little bit as well. What do you guys think about a potential NBA playoff scenario where you have your seeding, and with your seeding, you get to then choose your opponent amongst the remaining teams that are qualified for the playoffs? I love it. Great. I think it'd be great for storylines. I think it'd be great for rivalries. You have an instant rivalry where you have the Utah Jazz saying, we're going to pick, say, the Portland Trail Blazers. All of a sudden, you have beef with Dame Lillard. That is compelling television even before we start playing the games. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
So the first 4 teams get to pick. It's kind of like a draft. Is that what you're saying?
And you get to pick. I would say that each
number 1 seed gets the first pick.
Yeah,
and then 2 seed gets the second, 3, 4, etc.
Yeah, and the only caveat is that each of the division winners gets to pick and be the home team. So even if you have, for example, the Dallas Mavericks are the 5 seed this year, they would still be in the top 4 for picking who their opponent is going to be and getting that home court advantage for winning the division. So you can't pick another division winner.
Well, if you're going to go this way, you might as well pick whoever you want. But I think Castleman.
Well, just for the sake of having home court advantage, I think that should go to division winners, and then you have everybody else falling in after that. So that's where my thinking is. That's where my wheels are turning.
So Castleman has come up with more proposals on this show that will never happen than any other sports analyst in the world. He is leading sports analysts
in machine.
Yes, in failed proposals, Castleman's leading. But by the way, most of his proposals are actually pretty good. And this is one that I can get behind because it's interesting that you had the Nuggets and the Clippers both tanking. The 3 and 4 seed out west, both of them tanked.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that lead me to believe? Do you believe in karma? Because I believe that those teams are going to get upset. We'll have more picks in the show next week, but I'm going to throw it out right there right now. The Dallas Mavericks are going to beat the Los Angeles Clippers in the first round this season. LA is going to be one and done. That's a franchise that's never won. They've tried tanking for years. They used to tank their way to the number 1 overall pick, and it didn't work back then, and it's not going to work right now. Actually, the Clippers are basically the kings of tanking because they rest guys, so they're rested for the playoffs. And guess what? You don't have your rhythm then. You lose your rhythm, and you lose the first round. The Clippers are going nowhere. That's an organization just waiting to fail. They're basically the Detroit Lions of the NBA. But as far as your proposal, Tom, I love it. I think that'd be exciting. I think the NBA would be the one league to take on one of your drastic proposals because the NBA is doing just that. They added in this play-in tournament. They added in where we have players picking the all-star team. The 2 captains pick who they want on their team. And it kind of does create that little extra beef. It creates that little rivalry. So if you're sitting there and, you're the Blazers, for example, Dame Lillard, and like people say like, oh, we'd rather play you instead of the Lakers, Mavericks, Warriors, that gives you a little bit of juice, a little something. They could get trash talking into the game. Trash talking is really fun when it comes to sports. So I would have to find Adam Silver's information. And
he hasn't been returning my calls, unfortunately. I don't know why.
Well, Adam Silver, if you're listening to this show, we have maybe your assistant NBA commissioner in the waiting here with Mr. Castleman. Run up some ideas up the flagpole because I'm all for it. I think this play-in game, it's so ironic because they put in the play-in game to eliminate tanking, and I think it did for some teams, but it also created tanking in a separate way. So I don't like tanking. I think there are exceptions where it works, but for the most part, you look at the top organizations in sports, you look at teams like the Patriots, you look at the Steelers and Colts for many years. Those are winning franchises. Those are franchises that win. The Lakers, Celtics, they've been at the top for so many years. There are exceptions, but for the most part, tanking doesn't win. So get rid of it. Let's put in Castleman's proposal, and let's make it happen. I mean, who would be the team that you most want to play out west? I know the Lakers might be the one if you're least, but if you're the Jazz and you have to pick from teams seeded, can you actually pick? Let me put it this way: if you're the 1 seed, can you pick a 4 seed? Can you say we want to play the Clippers or the Nuggets instead of playing the 7-8 seed? Because obviously injuries make a difference.
Absolutely, yeah. You can pick anybody that you want to pick. You could even pick LA hoping that maybe LeBron James isn't quite healthy. You don't want to risk facing him later in the playoffs. Go for that then. Sure, why not?
Do you like it, Drew? Because I love it.
Yeah, that could make for some very compelling TV and rivalries.
Oh, man. Castleman, we should just make you commissioner. And by the way, Tom would make a good commissioner because we know he's contract Castleman. He loves crunching the numbers. He actually knows, math and economics, unlike Drew and I.
I have a rudimentary grasp of those topics at best.
Well, maybe you can be the assistant commissioner. where
I'll
you're
be the
more
assistant gopher for the NBA commissioner. I don't care what it is.
Be the
job in the league.
assistant to the commissioner.
yeah, like
Sure.
The Office, assistant to the
Yeah.
commissioner. Maybe you can be a special advisor or something. Like what is Theo Epstein doing for like baseball to like improve baseball? You can be that guy for pretty much all the sports.
Basically, I just have to get in as the coffee gopher and just scribble things on Adam Silver's. Instead of it's like, is this for Adam Silver? It's for have the Seeds pick their own opponents in the NBA playoffs and hand that to them. We'll see how that goes.
Maybe we
There
can
you go.
find. Maybe we can like slip it under at basketball arenas. Like go to like an arena and slip it underneath the arena so it can like sort of pitch ideas. Anonymous
Security.
envelopes, anonymous envelopes and such. I don't know, but I'm all for it, Tom. I'm a big fan of your ideas on this show. Big fan of pretty much a lot of these out there ideas you have, and hopefully some of these come true. As Drew knows, I said last week I hope to be doing the show for the next 30 or 40 years, and we'll have to review 30, 40 years from now how much of your ideas came true, Tom. Maybe if we can get one of them, it'll be a win.
I'll start a campaign on Twitter. We'll see where that gets me.
Might be viral very soon. Keep it out.
Yeah, I need that. Need that common retweet to his millions of followers.
Not quite millions. Maybe take out a couple zeros, or maybe more than a couple, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Maybe Castleman will be the springboard for fame for all of us with his ideas. Anyways, we'll see what ideas he comes up with next week on Salute Your Sports. It'll be the actual NBA playoffs in the actual format they have, not the Tom Castleman format, and we will see who we think wins then. Until then, have a great day, everyone.